2019 Aston Martin Vantage car review. Portugal's Algarve International Circuit is often a thriller, a lumpy 2.9-mile squiggle that marries the apexes of the 14 corners towards the crests in the Faro region's hills in playful and malevolent ways. It's particularly exciting inside wet, all the more so that has a twin-turbo V8 abusing some Pirelli P0s with 505 lb-ft of torque. The good points of 2019 Aston Martin Vantage. Looks such as a movie prop, only better, will assist you to drive being a stuntman. The bad points of 2019 Aston Martin Vantage. Oh, let's not get too bothered by the couple of cheap-looking buttons. Aston Martin Vantage Senior Vehicle Engineering Manager Craig Jamieson is hardly concerned about a little precipitation. It can be a British fancy car, in the end. If you're devoid of fun, Jamieson says, please come consult me. Must catch, own, tail. Rain or otherwise, we're having a great time. Regardless from the conditions, the brand new Vantage just desires to play, as being a four-wheeled Labrador puppy. It's hugely tuned into load swings, a rear driver that reacts faithfully to driver inputs and rotates watchfully yet predictably. The standard electronically controlled limited-slip differential invites us to prod the throttle earlier and earlier on corner exit. The steering clearly communicates once the 25540ZR20 front tires are slipping into understeer, and which has a 13.1:1 ratio, the rack is quick without getting twitchy. The steering isn't so heavy that will require a squared wheel with corners to acquire against, though the extra effort does permit fast-moving hands to be oriented because you feel the right path around the wheel. Lap after lap, the optional carbon ceramic brake rotors turn the top straights 150+ miles per hour into 40 miles per hour hairpins and not using a hint of fade, the pedal offering little travel, instead giving an answer to pressure how the best cars do. The carbon ceramics save about 43 pounds, even though the constant spray probably means the typical iron discs would dissipate heat with particular efficiency today, too. This circuit of these conditions may very well be unnerving, nevertheless the Vantage yearns for being driven whatever. It is best to leave stability control on, though. The Mercedes-AMG sourced twin-turbocharged 4.0-liter V8's prodigious torque implies that in low traction situations, the Vantage approaches the limit how an over-caffeinated lemming does cliffs, A track setting from the stability control programming allows more yaw before interseating, but inside the rain, it's challenging to feel out that window before coming to the threshold. While some issues with Aston's long-serving V8 architecture continue to exist, the newest Vantage's bonded-aluminium structure relies more heavily on stamped panels, instead of the blocky extrusions that formed that old V8. This construction isn't only more space-efficient than before, it's stiffer, too. Jamieson informs us the 2019 Vantage is 30% more rigid than its predecessor yet a lot more than 40 pounds lighter. A few stampings and castings inside central structure are given to the DB11, but Aston says 70% on the structure is unique to your Vantage. There are forged aluminum control arms beforehand, with cast aluminum bits inside the multi-link rear. Non-insulated rear subframe mounts deserve much on the credit to the handling fidelity. The morning after our track outing brings more rain, enough that some with the pavement on our drive route is passed or strewn with small rock slides. Aston has rather self-consciously labeled the bottom setting for your adaptive dampers along with parameter sport. When obviously any good Lamborghini Huracan starts in Strada Street, that comes off as somewhat contrived. The mid-level setting is Sport Plus, with track at the pinnacle, Track flirts with discomfort but remains supple enough in short drives. German guts. But while using Day's highly compromised visibility, we're not pushing the automobile hard enough to learn from the tighter body control anyway. A cloud bank has settled about halfway within the Serra de Monchique mountain range, the street climbing and descending in and out of it. Given a transparent view, no passing zone is simply too short, thanks for the 503 horsepower AMG V8. The money Aston saved by buying an engine from another automaker instead of developing it is surely part with the reason the rest in the Vantage is very good, but there's another interesting byproduct of the outsourcing. Aston engineers and executives can fawn over this engine over would sound sincere were they discussing something they developed themselves. When someone says of their creation that it's the best from the world, it sounds suspiciously conceited. But nevertheless AMG's engine allows Aston's visitors to pat somebody else on the back whilst taking credit for own excellent taste. The mill is really as impressive here as it can be anywhere, with gobs of torque providing a burly immediacy. The Vantage should hit 60 miles per hour coming from a standstill within 3.4 seconds and charge all the way in which up to 195 miles per hour before losing to aerodynamic drag. Aston spent significant wedding ceremony tuning the intake and exhaust systems to dull the fewer frequencies and boost the higher ones. A resonator tube plumbs intake noise through the manifold in the cabin. But engineering manager Jameson is quick to indicate that there is nothing synthetic playing over the speakers, this really is all natural sound. Under load and inside last third on the tach, the Vantage provides the high-pitched shriek of the company's naturally aspirated V8 predecessor, but at startup, the growl's all AMG, the lower rumble of your distant Avalanche. Behind the German V8 is really a German 8-speed automatic. The paddle-shifted ZF unit mounts at the back in the car, spun using a carbon fiber drive shaft twirling in the aluminum torque tube. While the torque converter automatic's shifts are imperceptibly slower as opposed to best dual-clutch transmissions, the sleek torque delivery and flawless slow-speed behavior suit this car just great. Smell the rainbow. Aston representatives make no secret with their plan to soon give a manual transmission within the Vantage. Indeed, one with the benefits from the rear-mounted transaxle is that it can make a natural shifter location easier. In the previous generation Vantage, the auto's high tunnel created for an awkward placement. The new car's engineers cite the Porsche 718 Cayman, an automobile that feels as natural as being a birthday suit, as their ergonomic benchmark. But if there's whatever else awkward concerning the interior, blame the one who spec'd it. There are 41 colors inside exterior palette, 16 choices for your main interior offering 35 colors for stitching, 13 for headliners and carpets, and 6 for seatbelts, and 5 finishes for that door and center console trim. Aside in the radio and back buttons, which look just a little cheap for just a $150,000 car, all of the materials are first class. Aston Chief Creative Officer and Lead Designer Marek Reichman says, "The aluminum is real aluminum. The glass buttons are glass buttons, the leather would be the finest quality leather from Bridge of Weir." In addition towards the engine, Aston also sources its infotainment system from Mercedes, where it truly is called COMAND. It's challenging to say which had been the smarter move. The industry-wide rush to add an Android Auto and Apple CarPlay is evidence from the fast-evolving complexity these systems, as well as an automaker of Aston Martin's size, configuring it right could easily consume an inordinate amount with the development budget. Aston preserves COMAND's intuitive menu structure and control knob, tweaking just the fonts. Unfortunately, its selection of typeface helps make the system look old. like some kind of fancy suit worn by some fancy guy. Nothing else in regards to the Vantage does, though. The oversized handle, Aston's traditional grille, the predatory slant and squint with the headlights, the daring taper on the greenhouse, the bulging side fenders, the wheels pushing themselves out in the bodywork, like they're forcing themselves in the skin. As Reichman puts it, it's all thoroughly modern. The Vantage is able to maintain the unmistakable proportions of your Aston Martin yet still look like nothing the business has ever produced before. Aside in the James Bond-only DB10, certainly. It always looks desperate when studios cast a perception car in a very movie, but turning the progression on its head and utilizing a movie flying insects a car that looks as being a concept and after that rolling out a production Vantage seems just like the movie car. Well, that had been a smart move. Vantage deliveries begin in July. By concept car standards, its $153,081 base price can be a steal. As for other RAW World vehicles, that lands in between the Mercedes-AMG GTC and GTR, which the Aston shares its 4.0-liter V8, and close towards the Porsche 911 Turbo. The 911's shape can be as familiar as that watch you really feel betting with a Michigan sports team, instead of even the GTR, and the satin green Hell Magno paint is capable of turning heads that the Vantage can. But the Vantage has a lot more than just its looks to recommend it. And you don't need to be concerned about driving it from the rain.